What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I'm feeling like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Wise here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. Today is no different. I have Yoni Mazor of Getida. And Yoni, before I formally introduce you, I always like to point out other episodes people should check out of the podcast. And this is part of my eCommerce series, also my Top Israel Business Leader series. But some of the people I've had on, James Thompson, who you know, founded Prosper Show, founded agency, founded other companies as well. That was really interesting. Chad Rubin, who actually had Skubana, sold Skubana, runs Prophecy now. Who are some of your favorites in the e-commerce space, Yoni?
Oh, you're putting me on the spot. Some of the greats. Scott Needham is, I like his work. Yeah, I don't know if you, he has a podcast also. I think it's called The Smartest Seller in the Room. And he has a software company called, what's it called? I use it all the time. It eludes me now. Smart Scout. Yeah, that's the name.
Cool. And then Eitan
Wiener. I mean, not only that I look up to him, he's my partner, my business partner, and I engage with him daily. So definitely Eitan Wiener for sure.
We'll talk about how that came about too, because that was interesting because he sold his company and then started working with you. So check out those, many more on InspiredInsider.com. This episode is brought to you by Rise 25. At Rise 25, we help businesses give to and connect to your Dream 100 relationships. And how do we do that? We do that by helping you run your podcast. We're an easy button for a company to launch and run a podcast. We do the strategy, the accountability, and the full execution. We call ourselves kind of the magic elves that work in the background to make it look easy. So you and your team can focus on what you do best, running your business and building amazing relationships, and we do the rest. So, for me, the number one thing in my life is relationships, and I'm always looking at ways to give to my best relationships. And I found no better way over the past decade to profile the people and companies I most admire and share with the world what they're working on. So if you've thought about podcasting, you should. If you have questions, go to rise25.com to learn more. It's really James and I connected because I had him on the podcast. We became, James Thompson, became fast friends and then did work together. It was great. So check it out. I am excited.
One thing I want to add for people who want to build a podcast or launch a podcast, take it from me. I am sure you can also take it from Dr. Jeremy here. It's healing. There's something healing about placing a stage for a guest and let them air it out and have these engagements. There's something therapeutic for them, therapeutic for you. So there's another extra value there that I don't think is spoken much about, but it's definitely there.
Totally. Love it. And it's funny, we were reintroduced by Nick Penev, who runs partnerships for Hello Tax and other companies and runs Scale, which is a software. So thanks, Nick. But actually, I just kept bumping into Max, your co-founder, over and over at his e-commerce conferences. I'm like, who is this ball of energy? He literally is at every conference way back when. And so I love Max and your team. But formally introducing you, Yoni Mazor is the Chief Growth Officer and co-founder of Getida. And Yoni developed Getida after successfully founding and operating a $20 million year Amazon FBA business. And they sold a bunch of things. I mean, they started on eBay selling watches, going, store to store, collecting watches, or like actually going to merchants and selling their inventory on eBay for them. And so he goes way back. And they sell fashion brands internationally and everything like that. But what Getida does is it specializes in Amazon discrepancy analytics and consulting. Okay. So what that means is they discover and manage financial and inventory related discrepancies in someone's Amazon account. Very simple. What you should have been paid for that you weren't paid for, they get it paid for. And they've one of the best value propositions I've heard, because I remember when I met Max, I'm like, Max, like, you're going to sell this service like hotcakes because it's so simple. It's so easy. We will get you your money back or you don't pay us. And if we do, we get paid a percentage of it. So it's
this
really
is way back.
results
this is like 2000,
oriented.
Yeah, this is like 2017, 2018. This is like prehistoric in e-commerce industry. Yeah, Max, I want to mention it's Max Borin, last name Borin. So shout out to Max. You guys, wow, you really put me to a throwback because he hasn't been out in events for a while, a long while.
You
In the
put
past
him.
past 3-4 years we kind of shift roles. It's pretty interesting. We can talk about that later. But yeah, today I'm more out there and he's more in the cave managing the product and the actual
Back at that
recovery
time,
process.
like I feel like he was the face, and you were nowhere to be found. Now it's flipped.
Yes.
And also the other thing is like you and Getida actually, there's tens of billions of dollars of transactions managed daily by Getida to find these discrepancies. And so, like you were mentioning, since 2015, Getida has actually scaled to one of the largest, if not the largest organization in the world dedicated to Amazon FBA auditing. They have more than 240 employees in 12 countries. They're also backed by a strategic investment by private equity firm O2 Investment Partners. And Yoni, we'll get into a little bit. You come from a military intelligence experience, and you even served in the IDF, Special Navy Intelligence. So thanks for joining me.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. Humbled.
Let's just, I want to talk about the role shift, but I'm going to try and do the simple value proposition and let me know. You can correct me if I'm wrong here. Okay. It's like, let us get you reimbursed for the things you should. And that could include inventory discrepancies. That could include fee discrepancies. And by the way, you can go back, I think 18 months. So if you've not done it, contact Getida if you have an Amazon account and let them do this for you, because they'll find a lot of unfound money. And the value proposition is simple, which is they get 25%. And right now, maybe if you listen to this in 5 years, maybe it's 30%, maybe it's 40%. And right now, in this day and age, it's 25%. So there's no risk. They go in, they see what they can find, you get money back, and they get 25%. Is that accurate?
100%. Yeah, you're hired. You're ready
Cool.
to roll. Yeah.
Such a simple. So talk about, because you could have charged a lot of different ways early on. Why did you decide that was the pricing structure at that time? Because I didn't hear anyone else doing that, at least at that time.
Got it. So yeah, it's man, you're taking me back. You're taking me back. It's good. It's just therapeutic. I have to kind of air out all these components. Okay, so let's just start a bit on the evolution of Getida. And when I touch that, we'll I guess understand the structure that we have in the history we actually have personally, myself and Max, actually more on Max's side, why this came to be. So, over a decade ago, we started selling products online. We had a website, we had eBay. And then in 2013, we started selling on Amazon, and the business grew very quickly from 0 to 20 million, then to 100 million. And what happened was we had all these transactions to reconcile and so much data to reconcile. We're not able to use spreadsheets anymore. They're simply breaking, right? So too much data. So that kind of pushed us as an organization to solve this issue by creating two things. One thing was to create technology and software that can audit all the transactions on a massive scale. And the second thing was to create a dedicated team that its sole mission is handling all the claims, right? Managing all the back and forth with Amazon and getting all the reimbursements. So effectively, we created the solution for ourselves, and it worked great. Then what happened was we're pretty friendly people, and then we told our friends from the industry we have these capabilities. So they told us, help us, we'll pay you. And that was kind of the early genesis in creation of Getida back in 2015. Now here's the twist. I don't think I ever mentioned it anywhere. What happens is Max actually used to have a friend when he was growing up. They're still friends today, actually. I guess a childhood friend, that their family was, I guess, a pioneer in the industry of auditing for FedEx UPS for carriers. And in that industry, they had a recovery success fee model that we simply adopted. Max used to work for that company. And then, they found great success in that. So we call this kind of a cousin industry, actually. The carriers, if let's say you pay FedEx to ship a pallet overnight and it came in 3 days later and you pay $3,000, guess what? They actually have to pay you back $3,000 because they haven't fulfilled the overnight promise. So Max had a history in that environment. We just adopted that. And that's it. That was kind of, we had some, I guess, some clue or a thread, but, some sort of a modeling for this. So we did it. And over the years, it was just growing kind of organically. We didn't, focus too much about Getida for the first, I would say, 3 or 4 years. And it was there. It was just growing organically because the value proposition was so simple and clear. So it has its own trajectory, but we're definitely heavily still focused on the retail side of things. doing kind of a pretty crazy volumes. And then, in around 2019, we made a strategic decision to cash out of retail and take all the profits we made and place all of our energy and motivation, creativity, and energy into one place, which was Getida, and helping really sellers. And the moment we kind of did that, and we detached from retail, we kind of took leadership on the niche. And today we're the largest organization in the world, at least by body count, maybe even transaction audited, that's committed just for this. We don't have any other solutions. We don't solve inventory management. We don't solve repricing or advertising. This is where we begin. This is where we kind of end. So yeah, in a nutshell, that was kind of the evolution of why we chose the success or recovery fee model.
Yeah, I love it. And if you're listening to the audio, we there will be a video piece of this, and we're looking at Getida's website here, which is getida.com. And so you'll just see some of the things on the screen about, how it works, their dashboard and everything like that, and the reimbursements. So that's kind of where the pricing model came from, where you decide to just charge a percentage of what you collect. Is that right?
Yep, that's right.
Yeah.
So it's a recovery fee only for successful recovering funds that were simply never available before. Only then we get rewarded. Just like that, if we put all this effort, we open cases and nothing happened, and you got zero, you pay zero. So the way we dub it is it's free to join, it's free to stay. We only charge a fee based on recovery. It kind of rhymes. So
how do you decide on how much to charge?
So on the pricing level, there's really three structures. When you join, and if you do up to 10 million in revenue, which is the overwhelming majority of the industry, it's classic 25%. That's not just us, probably with other providers. That's kind of the baseline. That's track number one. Track number two is if you do over 10 million a year in revenue and FBA revenue, we have a large volume seller discount where instead of 25%, it's 20%. Okay. And once again, these two first tracks is no strings attached, meaning you can cancel anytime, no problem at all good. The third option is that you like us, you want to stay with us long term. We could do a 2-year upgrade agreement, and really based on your volume and how much work there it's involved, we can go lower than 20%. So that's in a nutshell, kind of the three options. And the most important things for us is to make sure that whoever's partnering with us, they understand the value proposition. They really recognize that without our help, they were never able to get those funds, because I'm not gonna push us to our mission for a moment. Our mission when we wake up in the morning as a whole organization is pretty clear and simple to us. Is to make sure that FBA sellers get the maximum FBA reimbursements that they're eligible to receive. And we fulfill this mission in 3 ways. The first way is education. We just go out there and educate and train sellers, FBA sellers, how to get it themselves. In other words, there's tens of millions of dollars that have been recovered by sellers already that they do it themselves because we gave them the farm, right? And we did not make a penny, and that's all good. We're fulfilling our mission, which is to help sellers get the maximum. The second option is that they just, join us and we do everything for them, solved. So we fulfill that mission. The third option is actually together, meaning they, with what we taught them or from other resources, they're able to get everything that they can get on their own. Even if they use other providers, we are agnostic. In other words, we encourage the sellers to get everything they can get on their own or even with other providers. But then we can come in and run an audit, and anything that they're missing on for whatever reason, we can recover. And only if we're successful, we get rewarded. So it's always a win-win, because whatever is yours, it's yours. We don't want a piece of it. Whatever is not yours and you cannot get, we're happy to partner with you, get it for you, and only if we're successful, only then get rewarded. So the moment sellers really understand these alignments and these options, and they settle on the track and course that they're comfortable with, then we find that we have a really, really long-term relationship with them. Some of them already 8 years old.
Yoni, we mentioned Nick Penev, who helps some of these companies with partnerships and relationships. I'm wondering, and I've seen in our business and other businesses, some of the fastest growth comes from partnerships and these relationships. Who are some of the high volume seller groups that are big advocates of Getida out there?
Oh, there's a whole handful of them around the world. There's Wizards of eCommerce or Wizards of Ecom in Florida, Miami, Carlos Alvarez. I think that's the largest probably Amazon meetup group in the world. I think they have over 7,000 or 8,000 sellers, members of. That's pretty big in call it body count or seller count. There's also definitely the Titan Network with Athena and Dan Ashburn, Athena Saveri and Dan Ashburn. I
I
think they
think
have.
I saw them, Athena post about you recently. I thought I saw something. She shared like some of the two of her dogs were the cutest dogs I've seen in my life. So I
Mhm.
commented on it, and then I saw, oh, there's Getida.
Yes, yes. We over the years we partnered, and once again we go in, we do training to train the Titan members how to do it themselves, and of course some of them, if not most of them, probably partner with us to help them with the recovery process. So they're I think about 1,000 members strong. That's pretty strong also. So you got Carlos Alvarez with Miami 7,000, then you got Titan Network with 1,000. There's also $1 million sellers they call themselves, or MDS. I think they're about 500 or 600 sellers strong. The caveat there is only if you do over $1 million a year on Amazon, only then you kind of can join the program. With Wizards of eCommerce, it's actually with Carlos Alvarez, it's free to join, and there's a pretty robust Telegram group and meetup groups and stuff like that, so it's free. Hence why it's probably 7,000 plus, but it's still very active, very, very resourceful. Titan, it's paid, and it actually acts more like an academy, I would say, more like a university. We have 5 or 6 levels of classes based on your position in the market. So if you just want to launch, they help you do market research and source all that stuff. If you already launched, you're getting your feet wet. They have the grade or class or group for that. And on it goes. If you already are doing, let's say, over 50,000 a year, and you want to scale, you want to start hiring and stuff like that, they have that class layer for you as well. So it's really built impressively as an academy where there's structure, there's mentors. I think they have over 200 staff members there and mentors. So it's really as close as you get to a real bona fide university or academy for selling on Amazon. So if the sellers or entrepreneurs that need that structure, it's available. With MDS, it's more like, these businesses are already kind of established in volume. They kind of know what they're doing, so they're able to cross pollinate with each other by being this more of high volume kind of environment. So that's worth mentioning. This I can go on and on, but I don't want to overwhelm the stamina of the
No, I
crowd.
mean, I think it's interesting because people are always looking for groups or resources. So if there are any more that you like or recommend, there's another one that comes to mind for me. I had Andrew Udarian of eCommerce Fuel on the podcast
Yes,
as an
definitely, yeah.
episode. That's another amazing group. Any other groups that you recommend people check out in the e-commerce space?
I think that's a good coverage. With Ecom Fuel, that's a bit more of the D2C. So it's more less on Amazon. It could be on Amazon, but it's more like you have your Shopify. It's like that. So the ones I mentioned earlier, it's more on the Amazon side. Ecom Fuel, definitely we're partnered there. That's also with the D2C. There's Steve Chu. He has it's called Seller Summit. He meets once a year to do a mastermind. He has a very popular podcast and blog over a decade already. It's called My Wife Quit Her Job. I don't know if you know him or not. He
Yep,
also
I had
came
him
out.
on the podcast, and yes, he talked about his journey and about his brand. My wife quit her job, so
And I want to
that's a
give him
great one.
a shout out for his book because he just came out with the book this year. It's a Wall Street Journal bestseller. It's called Family. What's it called? Family First Entrepreneur. So we bought hundreds of them and we gave it to our staff and we give it in shows because I think it's a very good narrative for entrepreneurs to obviously try to make that money, but family first entrepreneur. So highly recommended.
Along the lines of resources, Yoni, tech stack. Someone was asking me the other day, Jeremy, they have a very successful business and they, this probably happens a lot. They want to start putting stuff on Amazon. I'm like, you're a little late to the game. No. Um,
Never
you
too
should have
late,
done
but
what
okay.
Yoni did back in the day because, it was 3 cents. You pay 3 cents for PPC and you make
I
$500.
started
You
before the
remember those
PPC
days?
era. I remember I started before the PPC era. I don't
Yeah.
even know why I got traffic. I just put something on Amazon, all of a sudden, poof, it just gets bought. So, and then I think 2015, 16, the advertising game kind of started or launched. So yeah.
Yeah, I remember I put some products up and I had was spending 3 cents and it was generating $350 in gross revenue. That's not profit. And I was like telling my friends, like, no, that's not right. I'm like, I'm telling you, that's what's happening right now. So not anymore. It's more competitive, but the person asked me, and what are some software and tools you recommend? And I'm like, honestly, I kind of automated a lot of things, so I don't know right now. But what are some of the ones that you're finding popular in the space?
So we're talking about advertising at this point.
It could
Amazon
be, it could be
advertising.
advertising, it could be just anything. It could be product research, it could be keyword research, it could be anything. What are some of the tools that out there that you've seen that they're popular?
Yeah, so I'm gonna go back to actually Scott Needham and Smart Scout. It's a really cool, suite of tools where it gives you kind of an extra vision to understand, at least in your category or your niche, how the sellers are doing, where they're located, and their volume, and what's working, and what's not working. So they call it, it's kind of an extra kind of approach. So that's pretty cool for market research and understanding the competitive landscape on Amazon. Um, so that's kind of the market research. For advertising, there's, I would say, 3 to 4 notable platforms that are kind of leading the market in terms of it's. So this is when the sellers kind of know what they're doing, but they need a platform to help them with optimizing it and keywords and all that stuff and automating things. So you got Techometrics, you got Quartile, you got Perpetua, and who am I missing? BidX. Okay, these are at least 3 or 4 worth mentioning platforms for advertising. If you guys are sick and tired of advertising, it's like, it's value, it's important. You have a budget, but you and your team are sick and tired of it. There's agencies. Instead of a tool, there's kind of agencies out there that can help you with that. Some of these platform tools like Techometrics and Quarta and all these guys actually can do a managed service for you. But on the advertising side, I think Rito Java and PPC Ninja are pretty powerful. They do a pretty good job as an agency, but there's a whole ocean and breed of agencies. But I guess I'll stay with that. What else is good on the tools and sides over there in the market? Data Dive by Brandon Young is doing pretty cool things. I think the essence of it is really helping you narrowing down the top performing keywords you want to bid on. Because once you have your budget can spread so thin or so wide. So over time you gotta hone in on the ones that really work. So I think Data Dive is doing impressive things there. Hopefully that's kind of enough for
What
people
about
to
email? What do you
email
think
in
for
terms
email
of
for sending follow-ups when someone buys through Amazon? There's a couple of platforms out there from an
so like
email
follow up,
perspective.
just say, hey, how was your purchase? Get a review. I think Feedback 5, that's what I used to use back in the day by Engine. Definitely Engine has that. They have the Restock Pro. They're really cool, interesting solutions. Engine, they're veterans of they started around. I think I had Jay Lagarde. He was the founder and
Yeah,
CEO.
totally.
I had him on on our show, Prime Talk, once, but I think we started like 2005 or 6 on Amazon, like close to 20 years in this game, and the tools they make are really steady.
Love it. Anyways, people love the tech stack stuff. So Yoni, thanks for sharing some of your favorites. So anyone listening, check those out. And then back to roles. Okay. So talk about the shift of roles between Max and you.
Got it. So early humble beginnings is that, when I used to kind of reconcile all the FBA transactions in my company, I just did it myself. And like I mentioned, the spreadsheets were kind of breaking. So what we did was, we were kind of lucky that some of our team members from the shipping department or the warehouse department were students that were learning computer science. In other words, they're aspiring developers. So I assembled 3 or 4 of them together. One of them happens to be my cousin. And I said, listen, this is everything I'm doing manually, and it's just not working. I cannot do this at scale. It's too much time, and everything's just breaking. What can we do to kind of start automating this and making this work at scale with technology? So they sat down and created this flimsy but nevertheless useful, which took me a few steps ahead, and created the technology, the early seeds of the technology. And so once again for inner use, but once we had the opportunity to help others in the industry, things had to kind of become more serious because we had to charge them and invoice them, all that stuff. So we needed more operations. So we started building that. So I was very involved with that, with the technology, the operations, and everything. Max was more like, he's very interpersonal, very friendly, sometimes friendlier than I am. And I might shock a few, people here that might kind of know me from the industry. But yeah, so
That's
he
why
was
you put
out.
him on the front lines. He's like, Max is friendlier than me. Let's put him
Yeah.
out in front of people.
Yeah, he was just out and about doing business and closing deals and bringing sellers in, and it's pretty smooth. It's pretty good. And that's what happened, anywhere between 2016, 17, 18, and even 19, early 19. What happened during 2019 actually was that I guess we're making headway, so to speak, in the industry. So Chris McCabe, I'm gonna give a shout out to Chris McCabe. I don't know if you know this or not, but I don't know if he knows this or not, but we had a good relationship, and he said, you know what? I want you to come speak in Boston. I have a meetup group. I want you to come speak, guys. I think he offered it to Max, and then Max so me and Max were like, basically we both offered. So, we were offered. So start with Max, but then I'm like, I don't want to do it. You should do it. I'm like, no, I don't want to do it. You should do it. We never spoke before. So we're pointing fingers at each other. So I said, you know what? I'll bite the bullet. I'll just do it. I'll make that I'll make that effort. So we drove all the way to Boston. We sat there, and we sat there. I stood up there and spoke and prepared a whole presentation and stuff like that, and content and education based on all the stuff that we knew, and it was really good. It was really impactful. The vibe was really good and strong. So I think that moment, Max was like, you know what? I think you should go out there, engage and educate and be with the sellers, because it created because a lot of the sellers were just like, I want to work with you guys. I want to be with you guys. I want to learn from you guys, all that stuff, almost like a magnet. So Max is like, you know what? Let's do that. Let's pivot. I need you, let's put you out there, and I'll go to the team and do more of the ops and this and that. And that was a pivotal moment. Then he himself, once again, is very good, Max, with doing business. Yeah. He brought a lot of the best. So early days, he kind of booked me, you would say, like Ray Charles had his, or all these famous singers or whatever had like their agents. For a few months, he acted like an agent. Like he started booking me all these places. So I went there and on and on and on. And then I made all these relations. I know once I came in and started understanding the environment and connecting, then it was like natural grounds. Then I kind of took off from there, and he was able to really kind of settle in with the operations. And actually, we kind of switched roles. Actually, I was a COO. He was CEO. And then that pushes us a few years forward into Eitan's age. When Eitan came in, we had to realign everything. I can touch on Eitan in a moment, but today the way it's aligned is that I'm the CGO, Chief Growth Officer. So I transitioned for operations to growth. Yep, that's myself. You scroll down. I don't know if you can see. Okay. That's Max on the left of me. Yep. And yeah, that's Max, and that's Eitan. So so I transitioned to chief growth. Max transitioned into operations, where I was, and Eitan settled as a CEO. So once again, Max from CEO became COO, and we kind of all honed and settled on the roles that we believe that we're passionate about, we're capable, and we can lead. So that's kind of the alignment today. Eitan's story is
we have, people say BC, right, before Christ. Now this is BE and after. Before Eitan. Right. And after Eitan.
Before Eitan era, yeah. So Eitan, in a nutshell, he's in the Amazon and e-commerce industry since, I believe, 2008, kind of a veteran. And he, in this industry, created two world-class organizations that both of them sold to public companies. One of them was his retail company, right, and his brands. It's under the Quantum Networks, group. He sold it to Advantage Solutions. It's a public company. You can check out the stock. And then the second was the Prosper Show. He co-founded it with Chad Rubin, shout out, James Thompson, shout out, and Joe Henson, I believe. He's also James Thompson's a partner with Buybox Experts, the agency that they also, I think, sold to Spreetel, dropping names. Anyway, so the four founders created the Prosper Show, and that sold to Emerald Exhibitions, which is another public company. So in short, he created two world-class organizations in our industry, which both sold to public companies. And I think 2017 or 18, we met at the Prosper Show. He came to meet and greet us at the booth. And he's like, what do you guys do? How do you guys do? Okay, let me give you guys. So he was also obviously a seller. He's like, let me give you guys a shot. And he got good results. And the thing for him is that in 2011, he actually built a tech and a solution for himself also to do all the reimbursements. And the person he partnered with actually created his own business for it, way before Getida's era, call it. And he ran off with it, and it's all good. So he knew much about it. And then he tried the others. He really kind of tried all the others in the market. And we stumbled upon us. He got all of a sudden this lift. He's like, how could this be that there's a lift? So we told him, we're focused in this. We go deep and we extract more value. So you got to get impact. So what he did was he's, I guess, very well connected. He started to kind of recommend his industry friends to try it out. So they got good impact. So it was like a good impact snowball that happened over the years. And then what happened was, once he sold both businesses, and I guess he had cash in his hands and time in his hands, he kind of looked around, and I think he realized that, you know what, maybe he can come in, had all these good interactions, good impact. Maybe he can come in as an investor and a partner and a CEO and create further impact for Getida. And that's what kind of happened in 2021. That's when he settled officially as an investor and CEO. And that's the in Eitan era.
Obviously there's a lot of value from his expertise, a lot of strategic value as well. So, I mean, how did he and you approach that conversation? Because obviously you've been running Getida for many years at this point. So you could have been like, listen, cool, we don't want your money. We're doing good. We'd love to have you on the board, but you decided to have a deeper relationship. How did you navigate that conversation between investor, CEO, and where to even go with it? What were the other options on the table?
I think there's some level of divine intervention, or I guess secret to that. One thing I didn't share it, I think, anywhere, but here's I'm spilling the beans. Here's what's happened, guys. Here's what happened. So what happened was 2020. Eitan was kind of sunsetting his positioning with the companies that he sold, and during March, we all know COVID-19 boom happened. And what happened was the business, the offices that they had in New York City, they shut it down, and everybody's working from home. Our office is in Teaneck, New Jersey, which is literally 2 minutes from where he lives. So, he was working from home. Home got very noisy during the COVID. We had an empty office, but I was here, so it was very hard for me to work at home. I guess it was also very hard for him to work at home because it got very noisy. So I came to the office. It's a whole building with all these chambers. So I have my own domain, which was great in privacy. So, and we're in touch with Eitan and said, Eitan, if you want, you only live 2 minutes away from here. Get your own chamber and do your magic and do what you got to do. No problem. No fee, no charge. And he did. He took me out. He took took me on upon this offer, and he settled here. And then day to day, we were kind of engaging and interacting. And then I guess he started kind of understanding more and more of what we do and the value that we deliver. And he provided lots of good information and insights and direction. So we're just kind of molded in, gelled in together on a daily basis, unintentionally because of COVID and the consequence of COVID. I guess after a few weeks, we're already kind of seeing each other because, you have that isolation. So we became like a family circle, right?
It's like he's like one of 4 people you've seen on the planet.
Yeah, only family and Eitan. It's pretty much it. Or, so that's what's going to happen. And yeah, so just, after a while, it just made sense to have him come in. It's very natural, much less friction than one would expect, where you say, I have an idea, let's try this out. It's more like we're already kind of day-to-day engaging almost like partners, or at least on intellectual and professional in exchanges. To say, why don't you come in and invest money and take a role and take leadership? We believe in you. I think we have good chemistry here, and we went for it. So thank God it was very successful.
I'm curious, Yoni, some of the lessons you learned from Eitan, but before we get there, I'm curious, how do you, when someone's investing, you obviously have to have a valuation, right? To base it on something, right? How did you decide? I mean, if you're not selling the company, there's no point, right? You don't need to go evaluate it, or if someone's not investing either. How did you go about getting a valuation for your company at that point, so that what was fair?
Like anything, what's the value? You're trying to find, you try to compare it, comps. And like anything, when you buy a house, the bank comes to assess it, or looks for houses. Not in, if you're buying in New York, it's not going to look for house values in Cuba. It's going to look for house values around in New York, similar square foot, square foot and stuff like that. So we kind of look out there in the market for, for companies that will have similar ingredients of size, revenue, profit, technology, service, those combinations. And based on that, when we have a few points of measurement, we kind of balance it out and say, we think it's fair on both sides. And that's how we came to it. Also, with the help of the lawyers also help with that as well.
Do you consider yourself, I guess I would kind of categorize you as a tech-enabled service? Is that how would you categorize yourself?
We have a joke about this. Yeah. We have a joke about this because a few things. First of all, I want to mention and throw this out there. Getida, anybody listening, watching, we're not a software and we're not a tool. You know what we are? We're a solution. As a solution, we use software and technology, but a dedicated team to service you. And together, that powerful combination of technology and a dedicated service team creates a solution. What's the solution? Maximum recovery. You plug and play. We take care of the rest. You focus on business. We focus on archaeology, looking into the past and delivering you golden coins from the Roman era. And only if we're successful, only then we get rewarded. So that's kind of what we are, what we do. And what was the original question? Sorry.
I was just trying to define the tech. I would define you as a tech-enabled service.
So we're a solution. And, obviously there's a SaaS kind of styling, which is software as a service, meaning you use a software and you pay monthly for it as a service. So we actually call ourselves SWAS, which is software with a service. SWAS, SWAS. There's SaaS and SWAS. So we coined it or dubbed it as SWAS. We're SWAS. So I hope that helps answer the question.
I'm curious, and you don't have to talk numbers, but like, were companies tech-enabled services, were they Were you finding multiples of EBITDA? What were people selling? How were people valuing those type of companies?
So it's all in the buyers, honestly, and the investor. If anything, for anything, obviously there's standardization and commonalities between sectors, but in the SaaS world, as far as I understand, yeah, there is an element of evaluating based on revenue. High level. Once again, this is one layer. There's definitely
That's why
much
everyone
more.
wants to be evaluated on SaaS because of the revenue. When you talk about some other companies, is based off of the EBITDA. So
Yeah, no, but there's always exceptions to the rule. I'll give you a small, tiny example, which is a big example actually. Google bought Waze, Israeli tech, Israeli company, for over $1 billion, right? It had zero, literally $0 in income and revenue, not even profit, zero. But it had 50 million users, a lot of data, a lot of tech. So even though zero income, zero revenue, they paid over $1 billion. Why? For Google was strategic. They can gather all these data points and optimize advertising, which is a main revenue and profit generator for them. So always exception to the rule. How did they evaluate that? They came in, they said, we're going to get all this data. We see how on the back end we're able to generate more revenue or more profit. So we're willing to pay $1 billion. So once again, always exception to the rule. So don't make any life-changing decision based on what I want to share with you with all these things. But in SaaS, in general, when they want to do a calculation of the enterprise value based on revenue. So typically, there's a delta, meaning some investors, they want to buy you for 3 to 5x on your revenue. So let's say if your revenue is $1 million, they buy your business for 35 million, hoping they're going to optimize it, and they're going to be able to kind of get other investors to come in, or maybe even make it public for 10 or 15 or 20x on revenue. So once again, they pay you 3 to 5 million, and then they'll be able to sell it for 10 million or 15 or 20, or sky's the limit. By the way, if you blow out, you blow out. But that's kind of a common thread domain in SaaS. Software with the service, some of them might come and say, hey, for me, strategic, I'm okay with it because I have other things I can do with this service or technology. So I'm willing to pay it based on revenue. But some say, no, I'm more interested in the EBITDA. So it's a whole spectrum of options. Depends on the buyer. You can probably shift the dynamics if it's like this or like that. So if you ever want to get strategic investors, stuff like that, shop around. That's it's definitely a certain advice that I do have for people listening or watching.
what are a few lessons from, thanks for sharing that, a few lessons from Aton that you learned? It could be leadership, it could be e-commerce, whatever it is.
Yeah, there's a handful because we work extensively together for years already at this point. So key points for me from him is understanding how to deliberately focus and pay good, really honest attention on creating a world-class organization. So from every department, if it's from operations, if it's HR, if it's technology, if it's sales and marketing, really understand that, hey, you need the best human capital, the best talent you can get, and don't be cheap with that, and be generous and really shoot for the stars. Worst case, you're gonna hit the moon, but you won't stay on the ground. You're gonna lift yourself somewhere and get somewhere. So and creating and gelling the culture as much as you can together. So once you have these high performing, by very, very ethical, high class, world class people from different cultures from all around the world, it's something that I never really thought about when we first started back in 2015, 16. I'm like, it's gonna be a nice shop, it's a nice side hustle, nice whatever. But today it would tell me 240 employees, 12 countries. I think a lot of it stems from Aton's vision of things and deliberateness on getting there. So I'm like, whoa, you want to get there? He's like, yeah, and I'll show you how to do it, and I'll show you I'm gonna do boom, boom, boom. So he takes all these actions, all these moves, and brings this all this high quality talent that I would say, hey, these people will work for me. And I came to America and I was 22 with $700. So it's people with doctorates or Ivy League school, stuff like that, working for me and making these salaries of hundreds of thousands of dollars and getting stock options, all that stuff. I was like, I got that fresh off the boat, which I would never even imagine. But with his leadership, that became a reality. And not only that, I'm comfortable with the reality because I learned, I matured, and I excel and advance in it. So definitely a big lesson of narrative learned from Eitan, at least in that domain and many, many other more.
Yoni, what did life look like for you? You're in the US, right? You came from Israel. You're 22, you have $700. What did your life look like at that point?
No, I didn't come here, as with duress. I want to clarify that I am an American. So I'm an American born abroad. So even though I'm an American from birth, mentally, because I came from another culture to this culture, because I was raised in another culture, I feel like an immigrant. So mentally, I'm like an immigrant, but legally, I was never an immigrant. As soon as I was born, I got my social security, my passport, and I always had a family here, my grandparents and everything. So so not much of a culture shock in terms
But
of
you were born
language.
in Israel, but your
Yeah,
mom
born
was
in Israel.
American. Yeah.
Correct. So my mother's American. When she was after high school, she went to Israel for a year. She said, "Oh, I like this place." She went to volunteer in a kibbutz, like these villages where there's agriculture. And then she said, "You know, I want to actually do my degree here." So she signed up for university there. Over there, she met my father. They fell in love. They got married. And she stayed there ever since. So most of her life, she's actually been in Israel. So when I was growing up, I always had family here. My grandparents, uncles, aunts. So I used to come every year, or sometimes a few times a year. I used to go to camp. So on the cultural side, not a big shock. It's all good. But I would say on the professional and business side, total had no clue. No clue what to expect, how people do business here or not. So I had to kind of learn all together. And I had a lot of hunger. I realized obviously America is embodies and holds the American dream, where if you really work hard and really at the bottom of it create real value for people, you'll be able to really succeed and make a decent living or have a decent life. So that's what I care with me coming in. And day in, day out, it's been what, 17 years or 16 years since I got here. It definitely fulfilled itself. And for me, even though born an American, but feeling like an immigrant, I do feel like, the American dream has been true to form for my, in my experience.
Were you thinking when you were younger and you were growing up in Israel that you would eventually move to the US?
Always an option, always in the
Yeah.
cards. Not immediately. Actually, when I was finally in the army, my father, he was in the army for usually you go when you're so here's the deal. In Israel, everybody goes to the army, nothing special. When you're 18, men and women, they all go to the army. Men go for 3 years, women, they go for 2 years. But if you want to stay longer and make a kind of career in the army, become an officer, and then you kind of build, or there's also other options for officer, but you can kind of build your career. My father, he was a military lawyer. He had a kind of high ranking in a way, and he made I would say, semi-career in the army because he was there for more than 3 years. He was there for, I think, 5, 6, or 7, and then he a military lawyer, and that gave him a lot of experience. So when he became a citizen, as a lawyer, had good experience because he and the army also paid for his law degree. So I had this history where they merely gives you that structure and pays and then you grow yourself as a professional. So my father has been through that. So I actually also had that kind of desire. So when I was a soldier, I really want to kind of become an officer and serve and build a career there as much as I can. That was definitely an inspiration for me. But I was a part of a very small unit, very unique unit that only had like allocation to go become an officer every like 2-3 years. So it wasn't my cycle or my year. It was like for a year above me. So one of them took that allocation. I never really had a real chance to do so. So America wasn't immediately in the cards. I was back then more on the army side, military side. That didn't happen. So America was a secondary option.
You decided, Yoni, at one point, I'm going to learn Arabic. Talk about that and why.
Yeah. So obviously when you go to the army, there's plenty of roles you can fill. Right? Everybody thinks army is like, I'm gonna gun a gun and go and run to fire. That is true, but that's a minority. I would say maybe 10 to 15% of the army personnel actually go into combat and become part of the combat unit. Same thing I think even goes to the US Army, for example. Not if, let's say, the US Army has 1 million people, right? 70-80% of them are just back end. They could be intelligence, it could be generals, it could be logistics. Logistics is huge, by the way. And it could be medicine. It could be so many things. So you only really have 100 or 200,000 on the ground doing things. That's what probably they had in Afghanistan and Iraq. When they came and invaded Iraq, took over, they didn't bring 1 million soldiers in. They brought 100, 200, 300. That's it on the ground. But even the ones on the ground, they don't all go to battle. They do the logistics, the cooks, and the doctors, and the nurses, and whatever, the computers and the intelligence. It's a whole structure. So imagine any big corporation that deliver, a manufacturing company, General Mills, make a lot of cereals. So most of the work is actually the factories and the actual production, everything around it. But then you have the salespeople. So I would compare salespeople on the ground, shaking hands and opening doors of General Mills to how a big organization is structured. So like the army in a way is like that, not one for one, but most of it is like really the product is crafting the security measures or whatever is needed for a defense or assault. And then you have the salespeople on the ground, or the soldiers, the troops on the ground, actually engaging and creating that friction to create the reality that the army is intended to create. So that is
any scary moments for you while you were serving?
yeah. So not only in the so I want to go back to the Arabic. Why I did Arabic? So just to complete that thread of thought. So realizing that there's many options of things I can do in the army. Even though I was good at sports, I was pretty athletic. I was like, I will actually in the army do things with my brain and think a lot. So I really was aiming towards intelligence, thinking, critically, and also really understanding the culture and the language of the other side. It's good for the career in the army, stuff like that. But also, they're my neighbors, right? And hopefully there will be peace. Plus, full disclosure, my father is originally from Tunisia, North Africa. So my family and Tunisia was there for hundreds of years. So there's definitely a legacy in Arabic nations there. So my father spoke Arabic with his family. So I heard a little bit, but I didn't really know. So it came to me that, I want to be in intelligence. In order to be in intelligence, that's Arabic. So after high school, I actually dedicated a whole year to learn in the special school in the north to learn Arabic and really immerse myself in Arabic. And that really, and going to all these tracks in the army where you can get tested and to get accepted to these intelligent units, and that was successful. So that was kind of first early on direction that I pointed myself in life, where I put a lot of effort and sweat and tears into something, and it fulfilled itself. And it took me to a domain in the army, which for me was fascinating. I learned so much, not only the language and cultural side, but also how big systems work, critical thinking in real time. Later on in life and business gave me a lot. So I figured that can give me a lot, but also obviously being on the ground troops can be a lot. It gave me a lot, but that's what I chose, the intelligence narrative, and thank God it was okay.
Are you still fluent today?
So I was never really trained to be a street hustler and just walk on the street and interact with everybody. It's more like listening and absorbing, and especially a lot of military jargon. So yeah, a lot of it is still there, but it's not so useful in the street.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely I could do the basics. I get a lot of pleasure. I'm here in America, traveling, and when I meet any Arabic speaking people, I just love brushing up my Arabic. And every country has these dialects. I'm able to recognize a dialect if they're from Iraq or from Egypt or from Syria. It's like they're shocked. How do I know? Because obviously my ear was trained to understand that. It's almost like knowing in the United States, even though it's the same language, you have accent. So if you're here from New York, you're like me, you're talking, like you're very, very on. But if you're from Texas, you have a twang, or you're from the Midwest, you're more correct. You have, same language, different kind of narratives for them or flavors.
Scary moments.
Right. So we had a war with Lebanon back in 2006. That was definitely not simple, I would say. I have family in the north, right? So they had to kind of migrate from the north over to the center to where we lived actually for a whole month because there were so many rockets being fired. So even the rockets were being fired on the center where I was living. So you have to go to the bomb shelter, stuff like that. Never pleasant. Kind of shocking that a whole country and a whole population needs to kind of hide itself from rockets coming in from a hostile place. One of the ships actually from the Navy, which is a very sad story, they actually got hit by a rocket by surprise. So 4 soldiers died. I actually knew 2 of them. Another rocket missed another ship. Thankfully, I wasn't on any of those vessels. So that's when I was a soldier. But I want to take you back even before that. So growing up in Israel, obviously, great, amazing country, great, amazing society, great, amazing people. The neighborhood is kind of rough. So you're from Chicago, right? Chicago area, Jeremy?
Yep.
Amazing city, really one of my favorites. Midwest, beautiful, clean brush. Amazing city, amazing people, but it has some rough neighborhoods. Southside, they call it. In a way, it's like that. So lots to do, you can definitely live a full, rich life in Chicago, but some areas are, they're problematic. Maybe best not to be there, but if you're there, you have to kind of be tough and struggle and survive it. Same thing in Israel. Anyway, so when I was growing up, it was during the second Intifada. So you want the quick history lesson, summary of the conflict? Okay. Depends where you want me to start. You want me to start in Abraham, the Bible, or fast forward to the let's fast forward to the 80s. I know that everybody understands most of the components. 1987, right, which is 20 years after 1967, when Israel won the 6-day war and took over and expanded its lands, right? So part of these lands, one of them is Gaza and one of them is the West Bank. The West Bank of what? Of Jordan. Fine. So we expanded, we took over those territories. in those territories of West Bank and Gaza, there's people who identify them as Arabs, as Palestinian Muslim Arabs. And, from 67 to 87, we're living, it's all good. 87, they called the Intifada, the uprising. They said, we're going to uprise, we're going to throw rocks and stones and we'll be in civil unrest and create violence because we want more rights. We want to have independence. We want to basically secede. We're not Israelis. In a way, I can borrow a little bit from Spain and Catalonia. I don't know if you have the whole story. Even though they're Spanish, they're speaking Spanish, they have their own language, their own identity. They want to secede and go, separate their ways from Spain. That's a whole another topic for another podcast. But anyway, that's what happened in 87, the first uprising. So they started with rocks and stones. It was very unpleasant. We said, you know what? Okay, bring your leaders. Who is your leader? Let's talk. So they brought their leaders. We talked. And then during the 90s, we had to the Oslo agreement. They met in Oslo in Norway and tried to make this agreement of, creating, their autonomy. And from the autonomy, it will be a country or a state, a world recognized state of Palestine, all that stuff. So early 90s was kind of a euphoria because we always had the conflict anyways. There was always tension. We thought maybe now we'll be able to have the chance to really settle into peace in the Middle East. Used to have the slogan and everything's good and rosy. It didn't happen. There's all these peace negotiations and very, very close a few times to closing on a deal, but it blew up. And then year 2000 basically said, you know what? 87, that was the first intifada with rocks and stones. The second intifada, now it's going to be with guns and bombs and you name it, they did it. So suicide bombers, stabbings. So when I was growing up, I was in high school and almost daily, everywhere you go, there's, restaurants blowing up, buses blowing up. So I was taking a bus to school every day. So every time I took the bus, I used to kind of think, okay, when I sit in the bus, where should I sit in an angle where if it blows up, I only lose my arm or leg instead of dying, stuff like that, or restaurants. So it was very embedded in me in an early age that situation is volatile. There's violence around. So I was kind of I grew up with that. And then as a soldier, that's why also being a soldier, you're very, I guess, motivated and inspired to serve. And because somebody else will serve too, because we're fighting this struggle, even though we're established country for 70 plus years, things are volatile and we don't take our existence for granted because somebody's challenging constantly. So that put it into Israeli culture in general. It's a side discussion, a certain level of intensity like no other. How do you prosper amongst constant stress from all these directions all at the same time? It's, I don't think there's any other cultures in the world that experience this kind of level of intensities and stay successful and thrive and have a happiness of life. Israel, when they do all these surveys of who's, the happiness of a nation, we always rank on the top. I'll tell you this much: we rank above many Western countries like United States and other European countries. So everything's like kind of paradox. It's like things are amazing and you're super happy about it, while at the same time, a lot of dark things around you happening. So when you ask about scary, definitely growing up, also being a soldier, even now there's a war there, so things are scary. Even though I'm not physically there, my family's still there, all my friends are there. I go visit there all that. So it's a burden or this kind of big weight that I carry everything around because I don't know, it's just who I am.
Do you still find yourself when you are getting on public transportation or bus, even in the US, going back to that and still thinking through in your mind, you're obviously super aware of your surroundings, being in New York, right? Are you still thinking that when you're going on
I'll be honest
public
with you, I haven't
transportation?
taken a bus or a train in many years. I know because of that. It's a good question. Now that you asked that, maybe it could be the reason why I shy away from it. But no, I'll be honest. When I do, I don't think about it much.
No.
But there is a level in general in public places. Maybe because of that, I'm just more like my wallet. I don't want to be pickpocketed. I'm like that. I'm a bit more paranoid to my surroundings. Also, after the army, I traveled in South America for 6 months with my best friend. And also, not volatile societies over there. So when you walk around in all these cities, so we always kind of walking together and trying to back up each other to always be very alert to the surroundings of a threat. It could be of a violence or robbing or stuff like that. I always have that kind of this element embedded in me since growing up, Army, South America, coming to the United States, even in Chicago. I think I have more than the average person probably, but definitely not traumatized on being able to take a train or a bus or stuff like that.
Yoni, I know we're at time. I have another question. If you have to go, then I will leave it at that. If you have a little more time,
I got
another
time,
question.
No worries,
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to talk about some of the misconceptions that we hear about Israel, right? So especially after October 7th, you lived in Israel, right? You live there, you have family there. What are some of the misconceptions for people listening that we're hearing in the US about Israel?
Yeah, so I'm just going to use a stat that I just, recently came out that shocked a lot of people in the country, I think maybe even in the world, that the stat said that, in America, the people in the ages of 18 to 24, I believe, 51% of them, 51, right? Check this out, believe that Israel should just be handed over to the Hamas and Hamas should just take over. 18-year-old to 24. And then as the ages grow up, people become, I guess, more balanced or more firm in their understanding. And then you see it drops like dramatically. Then you see overwhelming support towards Israel. So you can clearly see there's a volatile age group, 18 to 24, that are trying to understand the world. And over there, the terrorist organizations, it's easy prey. And they poison their minds to think, yeah, just give it to Hamas. Hamas is like France. It's like Spain. It's a modern European democratic pluralist society that should just get what it deserves, which is freedom and rights and all that stuff. And because Israel is a colonialist, imposing foreign alien army that came from a different planet and just imposed rules and laws and sanctions and apartheid and all these things on this group in society, which is, if you go down to the drill and you go through the reality of it, you'll see there's none of that. They also said genocide, stuff like that. So, it's always really useful to use data to understand a narrative. So if we're talking about data and narratives and genocide, when you do a genocide, let's say you have a population, so we were the worst. This is the worst genocide in history. Why? Because 75 years ago, they had a population of, I believe, 600,000, something like that, the Palestinian, population. Today, they have 3 to 4 million. So in 70 years, we did a really lousy job in eradicate, because genocide means you can eradicate a whole population. None of that. They were growing, physically numbers. Also, money, economy. You know that the average Palestinian, GDP per capita makes more money than an average Iranian, a person in Iran. I believe they make about $3,000 per year, in incomes. That's far beyond and above many other countries, especially in third world, like in Africa. So, in other words, nobody's day-to-day killing them or hurting them. They're actually growing in numbers because they have the places and societies and communities that they live, and they have their own areas and their own autonomy, really. In Gaza, it's own autonomy. West Bank, for the most part, a lot of autonomy. So use data. If you're 1824, they tell you all these things and all these slogans and all these things, and you're very volatile, my suggestion is just look for data. What does the data say or suggest about the reality of things? If they're really genocide, I want to see, let's use the Holocaust. It's an unfortunate benchmark we can definitely use. I think the Jews in the world before the Holocaust, World War II, were about 18 million, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And then 6 million perished in the Holocaust, the genocide. So they went down to 12 million. You know what it is today, Jeremy? It's only 15 million. Meaning 75 years after, we're still trying to get to the numbers before World War II, and we're not successful yet. That is the depth of the tragedy and the catastrophe of the genocide. A real bona fide genocide, if you like, unfortunately. So in this case, none of that. Definitely a conflict, territorial, religious, culture. There's casualties on both sides. Okay, we're more strong, so we have this overwhelming advantage of getting more casualty, but it's because by design, because the enemy is cynically using a civilian population to create as much damage as possible to the population to create this political pressure to stop. All these tricks and this and that. So misconception is lots of false information. These terrorists who are drilled down to the end of the day, they're against the Western countries. They're really against any other religion. They don't want to share the earth with anybody who is not like them, just like Hitler and Germany Nazis. So the Western world we're not violent by definition. We're pluralists. We want everybody to have something. But the world, unfortunately, came to a conclusion with with World War II and Hitler that you have to eradicate. I will not say the ideology completely, because it's still neo-Nazis today, right? But you got to eradicate the ability of such extremism to control a population and arm itself. That has to be deconstructed. So that was deconstructed in Germany. And a generation later, the Germans were realigned. They came back to the nations of the world. It's all good. And Israel and the Jews were great allies with Germany. Shows you a lot about our ability to forgive, reconcile, and move forward together. Not easy, but we did it. So we are more than confident that we have the ability to create an everlasting peace with any nation, any community, or whatever in the world. On the other side, lots of complexities there. My advice to them will be, if you want to have, once again, you're still growing. They're still probably going to grow. The population will going to grow, but the conditions are very bad. They're not optimal because of there's weapons in schools and mosques and anywhere and on their kids' beds. It's not a normal way to live because they're preparing to arm yourself for such a violent conflict. Why? It's because the ideology, like the Nazism, has the power to create this to the culture. So you got to dismantle that. So if that is successful, maybe there's chance, maybe there's hope. But once again, if you're 18 to 24, look at the numbers, look at the reality, go visit. If you really have a strong opinion and you're protesting, do it after you went to underground and visited both places and both sides and be serious about it. Don't just take all these slogans and then, if you're, a gay or lesbian or you're from the LGBT plus community and you raise a banner that says, I support Hamas, or from the river for the sea, all this thing that they say, you have no idea. All the lines are blurred because you as an individual, as a gay or trans or whatever it is, individual, will not survive a second in that culture because you'll be slaughtered, because it's unacceptable. They don't want to share the earth with you. They simply don't. So when you have this kind of extremism, you have to kind of eradicate their ability to hurt anybody that doesn't want to, who's different from them, that does not want to share that because they don't want to share the earth with them. So lots to say. It's very loaded, but use data, visit, and if you're not sure what's going on, just say I'm neutral. I'm still learning, and that's fine as well.
Yoni, thank you. Thanks for sharing that. And who are some of the people you follow in this realm to get information, or in this, what's going on? I know I like to keep it. I mean, it's so dark and so depressing in so many ways. So I like to follow Elon Gold, who is a comedian. Yeah. But he talks about it in a way that I don't want to cry every time I hear it, but in a way that's educational. So I love him. I do follow like Hillel Fold, has, he puts out a lot of interesting statistics like you're talking about, or any people that you follow in this respect.
So I don't know if it's helpful because I read Hebrew, so I follow all the Israeli kind of figures. I'm not sure if it will be helpful to too many here listening or watching because it's a different language. It's in Hebrew, but on the English side of things, I'm an avid reader, honestly, of the Wall Street Journal. They're in a way balanced in a good way, I would say. They almost try to take it at a neutral level. So even for me, coming from one side, I know I'm clearly on one side. I get the glimpse of understanding my side, but also kind of some interesting elements on the other side. I think it's good. So Wall Street Journal and all the reporters there. I guess Ben Shapiro, very very direct, very sharp. Boom, boom. He's like a king of arguments. So it's hard to compete with that. So he's very instrumental there.
Yeah, there's a lot of videos of him on college campuses, actually.
Yeah, the debates. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I also follow on the Arab side because I do know Arabic, so it's not so helpful there. So, if you're really passionate about it, really want to learn about it, read through the history of on both sides. Be honest, just read on both sides, and over time you'll see what this really makes sense to you, and you'll see that if you believe in pluralism and and the rights of other cultures, species, belief, credos to exist in harmony and really be fair and equitable, you'll see that just like Americans, that's the American culture. You'll see Israel's just really, it's like almost like another state of America. This really is. In our core, we're like that. If you're gay or if you're religious, whatever you are, you can flourish and live in Israel. It's not even arguable. Just go and see it. But then go to Gaza. Gaza, show me if people are like you or not like you, and if it's more homogenic or pluralist as you would like the world to be. So if you like the world to be in a certain way and you support them and they actually support the opposite of what you represent, it's a discord you have to align. So don't be too passionate before you check that out, because it's like shooting yourself in the foot in a way. But if you did everything and I respect that and you have your position and you believe in it, it's fine. It's all good. But yeah, that's as far as I can contribute to this argument.
Yoni, thank you. Thanks for sharing your journey. Thanks for sharing the lessons. Everyone check out Getida.com to learn more. And we'll see everyone next time. Thanks, Yoni.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I feel like $100 grand.